Hi everybody, and welcome to this, my first of two videos on the Nikon FE. We know it's a Nikon FE because it says Nikon, it has nothing here, and it has an automatic shutter speed on the shutter dial. The original FE and FM did not indicate their model on the front. They only indicated them on the back by the serial number. The Nikon FE is an interchangeable lens, single lens reflex. What that means is it has one lens. At any point when you're not taking an image, this can be taken off and a different lens or the same lens can be put onto the camera and your film won't be ruined because there's a shutter behind the lens not built into it. It's not such a distinction today, but back in the day it was a pretty big distinction. By back in the day I mean the 50s and 60s, not the 80s when this camera came out. This has a center-weighted meter, and what that means is that if the scene you were looking at right now represented the scene you were going to take a picture of with your Nikon FE, an area about like this, which is inside of my fingers, would represent about 60% of the metering data, and then everything outside of it would be about 40%. It's a good all-around metering mode. Many of the film cameras from the FE's generation, like the FE, FM, the Pentax MX, a number of different Canons, had center-weighted metering as their only metering option, and it's pretty good, especially for general photography. This has shutter speeds of 8 seconds up to 1/1000th on the shutter dial. 8 to 1, these are orange, and that tells you they're longer than a second. 1/2 to 1/1000th are white. Those tell you they're faster than a full second. So the white numbers are fractions, the orange numbers are multiples. The red number here at 1/125th is your flash sync speed rather. M90 is your manual shutter speed, meaning that if you have no batteries in your camera, you can still use it on M90 mode and still have some functionality. And then B is bulb, and what bulb means is that the shutter stays open as long as you hold the shutter button down. The camera has an 83% magnification rate in the viewfinder, and what that means is that what's coming in through what you'll see here is 83% of the size that it's coming in when it comes in through the lens. The frame coverage here is 93%, and what that means is, let's pretend that the scene that you're seeing now is what you were going to take a picture of, and it represents 100% frame coverage. Well, 7% of this frame, in some combination of top, bottom, and sides, would be lost in the viewfinder. And that's okay because it gives you a little bit of room to play around with cropping when you get your images back or you're working with them digitally. It has interchangeable focusing screens, and in the second video what I'll do is I'll show you how to take out the focusing screen that's in there and swap it for different types of focusing screens. And the flash sync, as I mentioned here in red, is 1/125th of a second. So if you're going to use your flash, you need to have it in 1/125th or any of the slower shutter speeds. Those will also work for flash sync. Of 2/50th, a 500, and a 1/1000th, they will not work for flash photography, and in the second video I'll explain why. The Nikon FE was released as an advanced amateur camera or a professional photographer backup camera. It's robust, it has a lot of high-end features, or in its day it had a lot of high-end features. They're still very good and very capable cameras now, but the generations that came after this eclipsed this in terms of what they can do. But for its time and still today, they are considered advanced amateur cameras. So they have great build quality, a great set of features, and they have a very nice viewfinder in them by any standard. They are produced by Nippon Kogaku, which later became Nikon Corporation, in Tokyo, Japan, and they went into production in 1978 and exited production in 1983. They were preceded by the Nikon EL2, and that camera led to this one. They were followed by the Nikon FE2, a direct follow-on to this camera, and they were concurrent with the F2, F3, FM, FM2, and EM. So now as we do, let's take a look at the camera's features and talk about what everything is. Here's the top of the camera, and we'll start as we do with the strap lugs here, technically on the front sides-ish area. These are what you're going to connect your camera strap to. And you can see that these have these little plastic doodads on them. Sometimes they have them, sometimes they don't. These were so that when you carried your camera, that and it was held, these were held upright by the strap. The plastic would protect the finish on the camera here from being rubbed away by the metal split rings. On the top of the camera, we have first here, this is marked ASA. Today it's called ISO. The numbers are the exact same thing. If you get film that's 400 ISO, the ASA speed is the same. So the slowest is 12, and then it goes up to just slightly faster than 3200. You can kind of see the 3200 right there. When you put your film in, what you want to do is adjust your ISO. And so this little button right here is your ISO lock release. You just push it down and then you can adjust your ISO dial. So if you're using 400 ISO film, you just set this to 400. This is the film rewind knob that you use to rewind your film when you're done with it. And this is the film back lock release that you have to pull towards the back of the camera before you can open up the camera's back. This dial right here is your exposure compensation dial. 0 means you will shoot the correct exposure. +2 means you will overexpose at 2 stops. -2 means you will underexpose at 2 stops. To illustrate what that means, each of these numbers here is a stop. So if your correct shutter speed is 1/125th and you have this set to +2, is it going to let me do it? There we go. Then it's actually going to give you 2 times as much light, which is 60th and a 30th. So if you have this dial set incorrectly, you can screw up your exposures if you don't realize it. So in general, unless you're intentionally over or underexposing, keep this set to 0. Here we have the flash hot shoe. This little black line there is the shutter speed index that tells you what shutter speed you have selected. Shutter speed dial right here. This little silver button is your auto mode lock. So if you switch it to auto, you can't switch it out of auto without pushing that silver button down. This little symbol here indicates your film plane. Film advance lever, shutter speed, or shutter actuation button, your shutter release there. And this is your double exposure lever, and I'll show you how to use that in the second video as well. Also on the top of the camera right here, you can see this red dot. If you can see this red dot, you're able to take a picture. This is your camera is ready indicator. If you can't see it, your shutter button is locked. Moving to the front of the camera here, we have the self timer lever. And the self timer lever works, but you arm it by pushing it so that it's parallel with the chrome trim here, making sure that your shutter speed is set to what you want it to be set to, and then pushing the shutter release, and the self-timer will count. The mirror will first pop open, which you can see here, that reduces shutter shake, and then the self-timer will trip, and then the shutter will actuate, and your exposure will be taken having used the self-timer. Here we have the depth of field preview lever. What the depth of field preview lever does is allow you to stop down the aperture to get an idea of what your depth of field will be when you take your picture. This is also useful in metering NAI lenses. Even though I don't have one, I will show you the process of metering with NAI lenses in the second video. This button right here is your NAI index tab release. This tab right here can be damaged if you mount a pre-AI or an NAI lens, they're called, on this camera. So you can use them, you just have to push the button on the ring down and pop that tab up, and now you can mount a lens that does not have the indexing tab on it like this one does. Then this is your lens release button right here. And then here we have the flash PC port. On the back of the camera we have the battery check button, which I don't have batteries in this right now, but if I did, you would push this button down, and then I believe that the light is inside of there that lights up. We'll see that in the second video when I put batteries in this camera. Viewfinder eyepiece with the viewfinder window. At the top of that viewfinder, there's a little red light in there. With some flashes, not all, that light will illuminate to let you know that they're ready. So if you can imagine being a photographer using one of these when they were brand new, it would have been pretty amazing to look through the viewfinder, and then there's a red glow at the top of your field of view out of your eye, and then you know you can take a picture and the flash will go off. Model number and serial number. Film memo window right here. This is where you would tear the tab off your box of film to slide it in there so you can remember what type of film you have. Here's the camera's bottom. We have an electronic contact for the motor drive. This is your battery chamber. I'll show you how to change batteries in video too. This is your tripod bushing, your manufacturer location, which is Tokyo, Japan. Your film rewind release, which you need to press down before you rewind film, and I'll show you why in the second video. And then the film advanced mechanical coupling. You can see this mechanical coupling here is underneath your film advance lever. So if you have the motor drive, then the motor drive will use this gear to advance your film after you take a picture. So next we're going to look inside the camera. To get inside of it, you need to push this lock button towards the back of the camera, lift on the film rewind knob, and pull to pop it open. The inside of the camera here has the film cassette chamber. This is where we'll put film in the second video to see how you load it and use it. This little silver doodad here is a film guide pin. It helps the film come off of the cassette, come out of the cassette, lined up with the take-up mechanism over here. These 4 silver rails are film guide rails. It's hard to tell, but the outer ones are slightly higher up than the inner ones, and that's because the outer ones keep the film from moving up and down as it advances through the camera. The inner ones allow the film pressure plate, which is this guy right here, to sandwich up against the film so that it's flat when the light passes through the lens to hit it. Over here we have the film take-up sprocket, which typically, there we go. I pushed the film rewind release and that allowed it to spin freely, but when the film rewind release button has not been pressed, it will only spin this direction. The film take-up spool right here, which is what takes up the spool as you advance, the film take-up spool here takes up the film as you advance it, and if you watch as I advance the advance lever, you can see this spins, and that's how the film is pulled through the camera into the take-up spool. This little roller right here fits right up against this crevice when the film back is closed, and I can show you that by taking the film back off. There is a little peg here that you push down, and then you can angle the film back off. So if you were to close, the film back, it would line up like this. So you can see this roller lines up here, and that keeps tension on the film. And we'll see this in the second video a little bit, so that these little sprocket deals here can fit in the sprocket holes of the film and pull it forward. Then you can see how the film pressure plate lines up with the shutter opening here. And then this spring puts pressure on the cassette so that it's lined up correctly to advance film through the camera. So I mentioned that this camera can use NAI lenses, and I don't anymore have them to show you, but basically if you were to identify an NAI lens, most of them have this silver nostril or rabbit ears. Different people call it different things on them. They also, you can see that the ring here is lowered at this segment right here and also over here. On NAI lenses, the entire ring is the same, comes down to the plane of this part right here. So compared to an NAI lens, a lens like this, which has automatic indexing, it's called, is notched here and here, and then it's notched all around here. And so that's why if you try to mount a pre-AI or NAI lens on this camera without first tipping this guy backward right here, you will damage your camera's ability to meter. If you break off this little tab, it's not going to be able to work properly with indexing lenses. You'll have to treat every lens like it's a non-automatic indexing lens. So we'll go through the process in the second video of metering and taking a picture with NAI lenses, even though I don't actually have one to show you. Some things not to do with your camera. Don't store the camera with the shutter triggered. So if you finished your roll of film, you finished shooting for the day or whatever, trigger the shutter. If you still have a half-used roll of film in there, but you're going away on a vacation for a week, you know you're not going to come back to it, it's worth wasting the frame. Because what happens is when you arm the shutter like this, there are springs in there that are under tension. And so if they stay like that, they'll stay under tension, and then they'll start over time to develop a memory. So if you activate the shutter, the springs come out of tension, and then you preserve your shutter's ability to work properly or at all for the long term. So don't touch the shutter itself, which was in the back here, and also don't touch the mirror. If you touch the shutter, you can brick your camera. It's a really good way to ruin the shutter and either have to get a new one or have a really good doorstop. If you touch the mirror, your finger oils can start to tarnish it, which can impair metering and your ability to focus. Don't leave your camera or lenses in your car. And you know, even if you're just driving home and it's been a long day and just want to hop into the fast food restaurant and grab a burger and fries, you're only going to be in there 7 minutes, don't leave your camera and gear in your car, because not only can the heat in your car on a hot day cause the oils in your camera and lenses especially to get very thin and get to places they shouldn't be, like on the aperture blades, which will affect the lens's ability to perform. And then when those oils get thick again, they can affect the camera's ability to perform. But leaving your camera gear in your car is a really good way to come out, even after just 30 seconds, to a broken car window and no camera gear. So when you are when you're in your car with a camera, keep your camera on you, even if you're only hopping into the gas station convenience store to pick up a fountain drink and a banana or something like that. Don't store your gear in a plastic bag or box. If you do, make sure you have a rechargeable desiccant pack, one you can pop in the oven at 300 degrees for a few hours when it turns colors. Because the moisture will permeate the plastic and it can cause fungus to grow on the lens, in the optics, or of the camera as well, or in the leather covering of the camera. And if you get fungus on the lens or fungus in here, you can really impair your camera's ability to work. Lens fungus will make your images blurry or hazy or glare a lot. Viewfinder fungus will make it hard to focus, and fungus in the leather will make your camera smell very, very bad. It's not a great thing to have your nose pressed up against a camera when it smells like mildew. Also, don't let your camera get wet, because these aren't weather sealed and they have electronics which are aging very, very poorly, actually, for the FE, I hate to say. I've been trying to get my hands on a working FE for 8 years, and I've had 9 of them before this that either arrived not working or stopped working within a few days of arriving. And this one has held in there, but as you can see from inside of it, it's barely been used. It's got a lot of external wear, so it's been carried around a lot, but the pressure plate has basically no wear on it. At any rate, the electronics in these have aged about as well as any electronics from the late 70s or early 80s, so treat them with a little bit of care and don't let them get wet. And just remember, your camera is a precision tool, and as long as you take care of your Nikon FE, your Nikon FE will take care of you. So that is the first video on the Nikon FE. If this video was helpful, please leave me a thumbs up. That lets me know that I'm producing content which is useful and helpful to you. If you have questions or comments, please leave those below. I'm pretty good about responding in a day or two. If you have suggestions or ideas, if I'm able to implement them, I'm more than happy to. In fact, a lot of the evolution and a lot of the things I talk about in this video series and in my other video series on this channel are because of feedback from you as viewers and questions that you've had. And one last thing, thank you everybody for watching, and I'll see you in the second video.